To prepare for rigging the character, I'd like to clean up the scene a bit, combine some objects, and delete a few as well. I can delete these now, these area lights. I'll just select these and delete. We don't need those. In addition, let me go to the layer with the hair. I think it's layer 2. And I'd like to combine all of these polygon planes together into one object. I think I'll leave them as, or leave the hair as a separate object, but I'll need to combine all of these into one. Currently, you can see they're all here. These hair strand objects are all under that hair group empty. But for now, let's go to wireframe, and I just want to hit the B key and border select everything, and then press Ctrl J, and that will combine it all into one object. Now under this hair group, let's just call this hair. And now that this is selected, I can remove it from this group or unparent it from the empty by pressing Alt P, and then I can select clear parent. And now it's out from under that hair group. So I think this now we can just get rid of. I'll just hit X and delete. All right, so we've taken care of the hair. That's all one object. Let's also come back to here, and let's begin combining these objects together. The things that we're going to want to be separate objects are, of course, the hair, the eyes, each of the eyes, the gun, and the teeth. So everything else can be combined into one object. And now that we're to this point, we don't need that multi-resolution modifier here. We've already baked this sculpt information to a normal map. Since we've done that, I can get rid of these multi-resolution modifiers. Now, keep in mind that I've been saving in versions every step of the way. So now I'm currently on version 78. If I need to go back to a point where I had the multi-resolution modifiers, I can do that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just remove these here, and the jacket, and the shirt. There we go. Is there anything else? These are subsurface. What about the holster? Yep, that has one on it too. Okay, so now we've gotten rid of all of those. And as I said, let me go out to my textures folder. We have that normal map right here, preserving all of that sculpt information. Now, in addition to removing the multi-resolution modifier, I think I'd like to apply the subsurface modifiers that are on the head and the hand. So if I hit the Z key, you can see that there's the polygon resolution of the head with that subsurface applied. If I took it up to 2 views here, you can see that's pretty dense. I don't think I want something that dense for this character. In addition, down here you can see that's how many polygons we'd have for level 1 here. So I think that's plenty. I don't think we need any more than that. So for the hands, I'll go ahead and apply this. And now if I hit Tab, you can see that geometry has been baked into the hand now. And for the head, let's go ahead and apply this as well here. And now we've got that baked into the object as well. Okay, so now that we've got all of our modifiers off of the character in one way or another, let's go ahead and go through and combine them. So I'll just select the boots, the pants, the holster, the buckle, the belt, the jacket, the shirt, the hands, the head, and I think that's it. Let's see if that's going to be it. Okay, so now let's press Ctrl J, and now we have an object here called head. Oh, and we should also go ahead and add the eyebrows and eyelashes, so I'll select them. And now we have a mirror modifier on this. I better click Apply here. So then let's shift select the rest of the character and press Ctrl J, and that will apply or add the eyebrows and eyelashes to the character. Let's give it a new name. I'll just call it character. And let's go take a look at the boots. Looks like we have flipped normals on the boots. So let's tab into edit mode. I'll press the L key and the L key here, and that'll select everything for those pieces. And I'll press Control N to flip the normals to the outside. All right, that looks a little better. That's good. All right, so now we've got the character. We've got the eye left and eye right. We've got the gun, the hair. Now we've got holster rivets here. Let's take a look at this. I think we better add this to the character as well. So I'll select those and then shift select the character and press Control J, and that should add those to the character. Yep, that added those. We have the teeth, and we have this UV character. What is this? That's that's the character we created to create the combined or the unified UV map. So we can get rid of this now. Once again, we have it in earlier versions, so if we need to go back to it, we can. I'll go ahead and delete that. And let's see what else. Oh, let's also take care of the outer eye here. We need to deal with this. Let me go to layer 3, I believe it is. Yep, there it is. There's the outer eye or cornea. So I need to unparent it from the eye left. I'll go ahead and press Alt P and clear parent, and that brings it out from under there. There it is here. I'll go ahead and tab into edit mode, and we have this here. It looks like there's a mirror modifier. So let's come over here. Let's move the mirror modifier to the top of the stack, and then let's hit apply. Now for the subsurf, it looks as if this is our subsurfed resolution. Can we take this down to 0 and still be okay with the smoothness of it? Well, it actually looks pretty good without a subsurf modifier on it at all. So maybe let's go ahead and just take the subsurf modifier off. If at a future time we see that it's going to need it, we can always apply another one, because we're going to keep these as a separate object as well. So I'll go ahead and turn that off or delete that. Now let's tab into edit mode. Let's hit the L key to select this one. I'll press P and let's separate the selection into its own object. Now we have this one. This is going to be the eye outer left right here. So we'll call this eye outer underscore L. And this one here, we will do the same thing here, eye outer underscore right. So ultimately, these eye objects are going to be parented to an eye bone in the rig. So that's why we're keeping them a separate object. All right, so there we have it. Let's bring everything back to layer 1 now. I'm just going to hit the A key for all 3 of these layers and press M and 1, and that should bring them all to layer 1. So there we go. Now we've got all of our objects combined or organized, ready to bring in the rig, and we'll do that coming up next. Now that we have our character organized here in the scene, let's go ahead and bring in the rig. First, I'll go over here to layer 2. I just want to bring it into an empty layer first. I'll press Shift A, and let's go to Armature and Human Meta Rig. And there we go. Let's zoom in. And there he is. He's going to be a lot smaller than our other character here, or our character. It's quite a size difference. If I hit the N key with this one selected, we can see that the dimensions in the Z-axis are 1.97 meters. That's what, almost 6.5 feet tall. And that, I think, is probably pretty good. I think that's what I want him to be. So I'm going to scale this character, our character, down to the size of the rig. Now, if you had a character that was smaller than this, let's say, or bigger, you could, of course, tab into edit mode, select everything, and change the median point or the pivot point to the 3D cursor. And then you can scale it up and down. Now, as you do this, because you're in edit mode, if we go back to object mode now, you can see that the scale is still 1s. And that's good. That's what you want. So if you happened to scale it in object mode, if you hit S and scale down, you can see this is going to change. However, before you actually create the rig, these need to be back to ones, or else when you create the control objects of the rig, it'll pop back to one. So you always want this to be ones in the scale fields here. I'm going to undo this so we're back to ones. But this particular size that it comes as is about what I want. So what I need to do is deselect the rig, come over here to layer 1, select everything. I have my pivot point at the 3D cursor. So now when I scale everything down at that 3D cursor. So let's zoom in again, and I'll bring back layer 2 now. There it is. And if I go to the front view, let's say, and I'll hit the Z key, now I can kind of scale this character down to fit the rig. And we're going to go through joint by joint to adjust this, so it doesn't have to be perfect by any means. But what I'll do as well is with the character selected, I can come over here to the object panel and click on X-ray, and now we can see through it to the rig. So currently I have the character lined up at the shoulders. You could line it up at the hips, you could line it up at the knees, however you want to do it, so it's pretty close to what you want. But I think what I'll do is maybe come here and just line up the shoulders like this. These are generally in the right place. They'll need to be moved a little, but generally speaking, that's what we want for the shoulders. Now everything else is going to need to be adjusted. And to do that, I'd like to see the wireframe of the character. I'd like to see the edges. So if we select the character, I'm just going to select the character here in the outliner. We can come over to the object panel again, and I'll click wire. So there we go. So previously I had the rig selected when I chose X-ray. I think I may have said the object or the character. All right, so now with the wireframe visible on the character, what I'd like to do is select the rig here and then tab into edit mode. Now I can select joints and bones and move things around without destroying that ones in the scale values here. So I'll tab into edit mode, and I think first of all what I'll do is maybe move this hip structure into place. I'll hit the B key and border select all of this, and I'll change my pivot point from 3D cursor back to median point. And then let's just move this whole thing down here. I can just take this and move this whole thing up and down, and I want to kind of maybe come right down here. I want these joints to be in line with that edge right there on the hips. So that looks pretty good. Let's come up here and take a look now. I could maybe take this and kind of move it down a bit so these three bones are more evenly spaced. Let's go down and take a look at the legs here. Perhaps what I should do is go back to wireframe and border select one side of this lower leg here. Now before I move this, if I hit the G key and move this around, I'm only moving one side. So what I really need to do is have mirror on, so as I move one side, the other side moves as well. To do that, I can come over here to the Options tab and click on X-axis mirror. Now if I move this over, you can see that other side comes along. So I'll move this over to where the knee should be. It looks to me like my knee joint is up here, so I should probably take this and just move it up like that, right? And then we can grab these joints down here and move those so it's kind of in line with the foot here, like that. I think though we should move this whole structure back so it's at the ankle. Let's do that here. Now I can go and grab these joints right here and bring them down. Now, so I'll bring this down like that. Now this guy right here, this joint right here, needs to be at the very back of the heel, right there, because that's the point at which that heel is going to tilt up and down. And then this bone right here, this joint right here needs to be where the ball of the foot is going to bend. So where the toe is going to bend, maybe right in here, let's say. And then this right here can move out just to the edge or the tip of the toe. All right, so we've got this joint at the ankle. Is that about where we want it? Let's maybe put it right about here. And so the knees then, this looks pretty good. This is going to be the knee joint. And the hips, let's hit the Z key and take a look at where this is supposed to be. I think this is pretty good. Let's move this whole structure up. I'm going to grab this, this, and this joint, and let's move that whole structure up just a little bit like this. Now, we want to keep a slight bend in the leg here. You see how it's just bending just a little bit. And that's when we apply the inverse kinematics onto the limbs, Blender will know which way they should automatically bend. If we put this straight up and down, it would be a 50-50 chance as to which way the knees would bend when we applied inverse kinematics. And it very well could be that it could bend the other way, the wrong way. So we want to have that slight bend in the leg there. Also, I've got these background images. I don't think I need those. I'll scroll all the way down here and let's just get rid of all these images here. The gun, the boot, the side and the front. We don't need those anymore. All right, so we have the hips and legs pretty well in place. Let's take a look at the arms now. It seems to me that these could come over and up just a bit. Well, maybe just over like this. I'll do that. And so then let's grab this whole structure here. I'll hit the Z key and control click and lasso this area. And then let's bring it right down into this part right here. Maybe rotate it a bit and bring that down. Something like that. Now let's take a look at it from this side. Maybe I want this joint to be on that edge right there. So let's kind of bring that forward some. And now let's grab the hand with control click and let's bring this into where we need it. So maybe something like this. And I'll bring it over like this, rotate it a bit, kind of lay this in right there. We'll have to do more adjusting there, but I think that's pretty good for now. I'll also kind of bring this down like that. Okay. Now let's come up and take a look at the neck area. I'll go to the side view here. And it looks as if we need to take this whole structure back toward the head here. So to do that, let's go back to wireframe and I'll control click, lasso all of this here. And maybe I'll even shift select that bone there as well. And let's pull all of this back like this. And now that we've done that, I may grab this and pull this back as well, like that. There we go. There we go. So we've got the spine pretty well in place. Here we have it here, here, and here. So there's our spine. We should probably bring this joint right here up to the waist so we bend at the waist rather than down here. So let's take this and move this up. I'm just going to take this and move it up into where the belt is right there. And then we may need to readjust some of these. I'll do this in the front view so I don't take any of these out of alignment. So I'm taking these up now so they're more evenly spaced. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. Now let's come up here to the neck area, and right here I'll just pull this up a little bit to the base of the neck. And I think this whole head structure needs to come down. So once again, I'll lasso this whole area. Let me try that again. There we go. And let's bring it down and back a bit. Now this needs to come up. And let me grab that all again. There we go. This should come down about like this. Let me place the head bone first. So I'm going to put the head bone right at the base of the skull, right here. So this joint is kind of right at the base of the skull. And now the neck bones, we should kind of get these evenly spaced. It looks to me like this bone here is sticking out a little too far and maybe a little bit too low as well. So let's hit this and move the clavicle bone back a bit and put this in place, something like this. And notice I'm moving everything kind of in the global axes. I'm using global transformation, and I'm really trying to move things in the side and the front views so that I don't throw things out of alignment. Well, we've got now the bones of the body pretty well in place. I think in the next video what let's do is let's now work on all the bones for the face and get those in place as well. Placing the bones of the face can be kind of daunting because there's just a lot there. But if we kind of move things en masse early on, I think it makes it a little bit easier. So let's go to the side view here and to wireframe. And we have the head bone here. So we have that pretty well in place. And if you can see inside the head bone, it's kind of hard to see here, right? In here, there is this face bone inside the head bone that everything is parented to. I want to keep that where it is as well. So what I'm going to do is try and lasso everything outside here like this. And also I'd like to grab those ears. Let me try and lasso around the ears as well. Well, I didn't quite get it. Let me try again here. There we go. So I've got the ears in there now too. So if I go back to the side view and hit G, I can move all of this down until it's kind of in place. Now I'm going to come down here and move, maybe get things aligned with the nose, or we could do the eyes, or we could do the chin. So there's just, you can do it a lot of different ways. Perhaps what I should do at this point is maybe just scale all this down. So if I hit the S key, scale it down some. Let's now hit G and move this around just a bit again. So now the eyes and the nose line up a little bit better. Maybe I'll bring this in like this. Yeah, so that works pretty well, but the mouth and the chin are still out of alignment, so is the forehead, and that's just the way it's going to be. You're going to have to go through and do a lot of individual moving around here. So let's try and take maybe this part of the face down here. I'm just going to lasso this area right here. And let's try and pull that up into place just a little bit closer. So we move that up so we get a little bit closer to the mouth there. And then maybe I could grab the nose and bring it back down. So just a little bit at a time here. Bit by bit, we're going to try and put things in place, and then we'll get to the moving things individually. Maybe I'll grab that joint and move it up. So now what I'll do is turn off the X-ray on the character, or turn off the wire on the character, and I'll turn off the X-ray for the rig. So let's do that. Now we can begin to see what's just poking out and what isn't. If we tab back into edit mode and go to the front view, I can maybe begin to select some of these bones that should go around the eyes and kind of move these into place. So I'll take all of these and just hit G and move these into place around the eyes. Some of these are going to need to come forward, some of these are going to need to come back a bit, because each of these joints should kind of lay on the surface of the character, right? So let's take this joint right here. If we move that back until it begins to intersect with the character, that's about where it should be. It should be kind of just on the surface of the character. It's kind of hard to see with the eyelashes sometimes, but we can move these in and get these just so they're barely intersecting with the character. So I'm going to kind of get these eyes in place, just move these joints back. Maybe they need to be moved in some, so they just sit right on the surface of the character. Here's a connection that has two joints coming together, so I need to undo this and shift select this other one, and then when I move them, they both move together. There are quite a few joints that are like that here, so you need to be careful when you're moving things around that you're not splitting joints apart that need to be together. Let's move these back toward the eyelid here. Get these in place and maybe move these back as well. All right, so we've moved those into place. Now we've got this eye bone right here. You see that's kind of sticking out, and if we look at the name of it down here, it's eye.L. And that's the bone that we're ultimately going to parent the eye objects to. But we need to just get it in place at this point in time. So I will hit the Z key, and we need to get this bone into the center of this eye. So let's tab out of edit mode and go back to object mode and select the eye here. Now, if I go to the side view, here's that center line of the eye. What I want to do is put that bone right in the center of the eye. And so to do that, I'll tab into edit mode and alt click that edge all the way around the eye. And then I'll move the cursor to it with Shift S, cursor to selected. Now if we tab back into object mode, select the rig right in here, there we go. Now if I tab into edit mode, there's the bone that we need to move. So this bone has to go to that cursor. It's kind of difficult to see, but I hope you can see that we need to move this eye bone to the cursor in the center of the eyeball. So to do that, of course, I'll just press Shift S and we'll move the selection to the cursor. And there we go. So now we've got the eye.L right on that cursor in the center of the eye. And moving this one should have moved this one as well. So that should be in the center of the right eye now as well. So now let's go ahead and work on moving some of these bones or joints into place as well. I'll move this back out so we're more on the surface of the character. These as well, I can maybe move these back. So we just need to get these in place on the surface of the character. Now while we're up here, if we go to the wireframe view again, we can see there's quite a few of these joints inside the character, right? The bridge of the nose and the brows and the forehead up here. So let's begin moving those out into place. Let's first of all select the bridge of the nose here and notice that there's a few other joints in there as well. There's actually 3. So I've got to select all of those and move those out to here. We could probably take the nose joint here and get it more in place while we're here. And actually this one up here, we could maybe get this better into place here. Maybe it needs to be right here, yeah, at that curve. The joint at the tip of the nose is a multiple joint, so you have to select all of those. And then let's get this joint out here like this. And this one should be like that. So it's just kind of following the curve of the nose there. This one here can come out to the edge of the nose like that. And these here can come in just a bit and maybe come out just so they rest on the surface of the character there. Now these in here, we're going to need to bring these out as well. And if you can see, there are multiple joints there, so I'll shift select that, and then I'll begin bringing these out like this. Maybe they need to come in a bit. This one we should bring out. Oh, that's a multiple joint, so I need to be careful there. I'll shift click that. I'll bring it out, maybe down a bit, and get that on the surface of the character as well. This one here, it's the forehead. Let's get this one in place. Once again, multiple joints there, so let's undo that and shift click. So we select all of those. Let's also go inside the forehead and bring those out. If I go to the wireframe again, hitting Z, I can come up here and then hit Z again and then just begin pulling this out. There we go. So we can see that. Go back inside, grab that, hit Z again and pull this out. Yeah, so we can bring these out. This one looks like it's pretty good. I may bring it down a bit, like that. So now we have the eyes and the forehead and the nose. In the next video, let's continue on down along the side of the head with the temple and the jaw, the ears, and maybe the mouth. Let's keep working on the bones for the face and maybe bring this bone here, the cheek, a little bit farther out and back toward the head here. And this guy right in here, that's going to be this part of the cheek as well. So let's move this in. Once again, it's a multiple joint, so I have to shift click it and move that forward. And let's try and get these in place. If I grab this and move this in quite a bit, that now comes around the eye and down toward the cheek. So let's see if we can get this a little bit better in place. Yeah, maybe something like that. Now this back here, this is called the temple, and this is quite a ways away. We need to bring this down and get it in place right up here on that temple right there, which means this right here has to come quite a bit forward. This is the jawline, so if we go to the side view, we really want this to be part of the jawline along here. So let's move this back again. If I hit the Z key and go to wireframe, we can see there's some chin bones here that are kind of hidden away. Let's grab these and move these forward, which means we've got this now down here. Let's bring this out as well so we can see that. There we go. That needs to come down underneath the chin right here. So now we've got these outside the chin. That's good. Let's bring these around like this. Now once again, the jawline, we're going to need to move this probably down just a bit. And then this bone here, let's go to the front view. This should probably come out just a bit like this. So it's on the edge of that jawline there. Okay, so now let's also work on this. This is the cheek as well, but I think it needs to come down a bit and maybe in toward the head just a bit like that. There we go. Now let's take a look at the mouth. We've got quite a few bones here that need to be placed along the lips. Let's move this, and these actually should probably be right on top of each other. It looks like I've moved these apart just a bit, and I shouldn't do that. Let's take this guy and move it so they're right in line with each other. Maybe move this in like that. There we go. And it looks like I've done the same thing up here. So it looks like I've taken this whole area, this whole collection of bones here, and maybe kind of pulled them out of alignment. Let's see if we can move things back a bit. I'm just selecting and moving them back toward the center. It isn't going to be too much of a problem, but I just want to get things kind of back to where they should be. There we go. Now let's work on moving these joints around so they're on the lips. And I'll move these around. This is a multiple bone or a multiple joint area right here, so I have to click a few times to select that. And let's get this in place. The ones on the upper lip, I need to move these down a bit and this down a bit, and maybe move them back so they are closer to the actual surface of the character. Now let's work on the ears. I don't think I'll ever be moving the ears on their own, but let's go ahead and just grab all of these ear bones and get them in place just in case. I'll move it forward and move it in a bit. And then each one of these individually I'll move around until we can kind of get it on the surface of the ear like this. All right, I think I've got that in place. Now we need to look at the inside of the mouth. If we hit the Z key to go to wireframe, we can see there's a couple of things in here. Let me go to the side view. And if you look at this bone here, and this one, these are the tongue bones. And we need to just align these a little better to the tongue the way we have it here. So I'm going to select this joint and just move it to the tip of the tongue. And then this one here and move it pretty close. And then this one here, I guess we need this. And then this one to the base of the tongue right here. So now I've got it like this, kind of in line with our tongue right there. Okay. Now the teeth. You can see the teeth bones are here and here, and they're pretty big and out of alignment with our current teeth. Let's hit the G key and just move this forward like this. And then I'll grab this joint and move it so it's just kind of as big as our teeth are right there. And this one down here, I'll do the same thing and move this joint forward like that. All right, I think that works pretty well for the face now. Let's now go in the next video to work on placing the joints of the hand. To put the bones for the hands and the fingers in place, let's turn on wireframe for the character. There we go. And then let's select the rig and let's turn on X-ray for that. Now, when we have X-ray on and we tumble around so we can see the other bones in the character, it's a little bit difficult to place and know where you're supposed to put the bones. So let's hide some of these. Let's tab into edit mode. And what I'll do is just border select maybe the whole bottom half of the character's body here. And let's just hit the H key and then we can see the bones of the hand a little better now. Okay, so what let's do is let's work on getting each of these bones, each of these bone chains into place. I think first of all I'll just kind of move this thumb bone out here. Let's just move this out here. Maybe I can rotate it a bit and just kind of put it there. The next thing let's do is figure out where these bones should be. These are the ones for the main knuckle of the hand. So let's take this and just move it back. Oh, and it's a multiple joint one, so I have to shift select the other one in there. But let's now take this one back to about right here. You can see where the curve is there for the knuckle. All right, so now let's take this joint and maybe let's just take all of these here and let's move these up and forward to where this joint is. And then let's bring this up to this joint right here. And then let's bring this up all the way forward to the tip. Now it's still hard to see with some of these in place. So what we could do is we could actually border select, say, all of these for now and hide these as well, just with the H key. And then now we can kind of see a little bit better for this finger. All right, so we're doing pretty well here. We're getting these in place. I think I'm going to take this bone and move it down quite a bit like this. There we go. Okay, so now we need to move this in the top view now. Let's grab this bone and kind of move it here. This joint, move it here. And this joint and move it here. Okay, so now we've got these in place. The next thing we need to do is make sure they're aligned. And if you can see here that this one's just a little bit twisted out of alignment from the others. And if we go to the rotate manipulator and click on one of these, Now I need to change from global to normal, and now we can see that the red or x-axis is up, right? We can see that it's up and facing us, and that's what we want. We want to see that red circle in line with us. And we can't just go like this because it won't do anything, right? What we need to do is actually adjust the roll. So what I'll do is hit the N key to open up the sidebar, and right over here is the roll field. And if I click and drag in there, now you can see it turns, and we want to align it so it's straight up and down or perpendicular with the finger. And I'll do that for this one. And this one looks pretty good. I'm not going to worry too much about that. All right, so now we have all of these fingers in place and aligned correctly with the roll. All right, let's bring everything else back with Alt-H. All right, so now what let's do, I'm going to have to go back and border select the bottom half of the character again, like this, and hide that. Now let's go in and take a look at the middle finger. Maybe what we could do now is let's select the finger that we've already done. Let's do that, and let's hide this away with the H key. And maybe I'll go ahead and select these as well, and we'll hide these away. I just find that I actually take less time if I hide things away than if I try and struggle with seeing through things. So now let's bring this joint up to the knuckle here, right there. And then we want this one, let's move this right here. And I'll take this and move this right here. There it is. And that one I'll move out here. Okay, now let's spin around here on the top and let's see what we can do here. Let's try and arrange these or get them in line a little bit better. I'll select those two joints and move that there. And maybe this one to here, this one to here, and this one to here. And I just want to remind you to make sure that X-axis mirror is on in your armature options here and under the options tab, because that means that the other side is being done as well as we do this. So make sure that is on. All right, so for this, I'm going to roll until the X-axis is perpendicular to the finger. Same with this. And same with this. Okay, so we have that finger done. All right, so let's press Alt-H. And once again, I will select everything here and hide it because it gets in the way. And I will take everything. I'll take all of these bones, all the ones that we've already done, and let's hide these away with the H key. And I think I'll hide the pinky as well. Don't need that for now. All right, so now this one here. I feel like we could take this up and over quite a bit. Let me look at it from this side. I'm going to hit the period key and frame it up and then tumble around and take a look at it from this side. Yeah, I think I can get it there. Let's take this and move this up to that joint and this up to this joint and then this out to the tip of the finger. All right, and then we need to work on putting these in alignment a little bit better. So let's move this over to the joint in the center, and here, and here. All right, so now what let's do, let's take this with the roll field. I'll click and drag and make this perpendicular to the finger. Same with this one, and same with this one. Okay, now Alt-H. We're getting close now. I'm going to once again do the trick over here. Hide it. Now let's zoom in over here. And we're working on the pinky. So what we could do actually is we could take this pinky chain right here and we could press Shift-H and it'll hide everything except that. So there we go. All right, let's grab this now and move it into place. I'll tumble around and see where we are here. Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. And let's grab this and move that to that joint. Move that to this joint, like so. And move this to this joint. All right, let's look at it from the top. Yeah, we need to do some work up here. Let's take this and move it into the center. And this and this. We could maybe move this a hair back into the center here. Now let's take a look at the roll. The roll needs some work. There we go. And there we go. And this one, there we go. All right, let's press Alt-H and bring everything else back. And now the thumb. Let's take a look at this. Can we do this without hiding things? We may be able to, simply because it's kind of at an odd angle here. Let's take, I know this one's going to have to go here and this one's going to have to go at the tip. But this one, I don't know, maybe back in here, let's say. Let's take a look at it from the top. Hit G and move this to here. Maybe this to here. Let's try that. All right, so now we can maybe move these down a bit. All right, that looks pretty good. Now let's take a look at it from the very top of the thumb here. Let's kind of align the view to the top. And once again, we need to take care of the roll now. I'll click and drag in the roll field and spin that around so it's facing us. Same with this one here. And let's work on this one right up here. We can maybe turn it just a little bit like that. All right. So there we have the bones for the fingers and the hand. We could maybe even move these out a bit, but they look pretty good actually. I mean, we could move them out just a bit like that if we wanted. But I think they're probably okay. They're inside the hand, and all of the joints are kind of at the joint itself. I may move these down just a bit into the fingers now that we have them in place. Just move them down slightly. Okay, so now we have the fingers in place. Let's go take a look over here and make sure that our x-axis mirror worked. Yeah, it looks like it did. It looks pretty good. So in the next video, what let's do is work on actually generating the rig and the control objects. This bone structure is the meta rig, which is just the rig that tells the actual rig where the joints should go. So in the next video, we'll generate the rig and the control objects and take a look at binding the character to the rig. Before we generate the rig, let's go back and just take a look at everything and make sure it's all in the proper place. I'm going to go to object mode and select the character and turn off wire right here. And then I'm going to also select the rig and turn off X-ray. Let's do that. Now let's take a look at the face rig one more time. It looks to me like there's a problem here. So my suggestion is to go through and just make sure everything is where you think it should be. I'm going to switch back to global transform orientation and to the move tool. And let's just get this back in here so it's right on the surface of the character. In addition, now that I think about it and I'm looking at it, if we go to the side view here, this bone right here, that jawbone is really where the jaw is going to hinge. It's where it's going to open. So the joint where our jaw hinges or opens, I think, is more down here. So let's move that down there, and then we could maybe move this back just a bit like this. And the good thing about it is we can always, well, not always, but we can often go back. So there's a way to, once we generate the rig, we can go back and adjust the bones here in the meta rig and then regenerate the rig again. So it isn't a done deal once you've hit generate. In addition, let me select the rig again and choose X-ray, and these bones here, these are the breast bones, and I don't think we're going to be needing them too much for this particular character, but I can go ahead and put them in place. It doesn't mean we can't at least put put them where we think they should be. They'll probably be something like that. Let's look at the front view. Yeah, something like this. There we go. All right, so I think we have everything in place. Let's go ahead and go back to object mode. And now with this rig selected and the scale fields at 1s here, now we can go over to the rig panel right here. And if we scroll down, let me move this up. And if we scroll all the way down, right down here is a button called Generate Rig. So let's give it a try. I'll hit that. And there's our rig. So you can see that it's added a lot of control objects throughout the rig. It's also created a lot of these rig layers up here. And it's also, if we hit the N key and scroll all the way down, it's also created a rig panel down here as well. So what does this get us? What do we do now? Well, let's go through and take a look at it. First of all, I'm going to select the meta rig here, and I'll go ahead and hide it. I'll just click on the eyeball and hide that away. Now you can see the rig a little better here. Here it is in the outliner. If we select it and click on X-ray, now you can see all the innards of it. The control handles are here, say for the hands, and this cube is the control object for the hips. But to be able to select them, we're going to have to switch from object mode to pose mode. So let's do that. And now it's various colors here. And this handle right here, the red handle on the hand, is the IK control for the hand, for the whole arm. And you can see it moves the whole thing around like this. I just click the right mouse button to release it back there. These handles here, like this one, is the torso, and that can be moved and rotated, etc. Up here is the head control right here. That can be turned and rotated here. And all of these, of course, are the controls for the face. And all the places we put the joints on the face is where these controls have showed up. The blue spheres are stretchy controls. So if your character is a cartoony character and you want to be able to stretch the arm out, or the legs, or the torso, or whatever, you can use these blue spheres. Now, this character isn't going to be that type of character, so we're going to be hiding those away. We're not going to be using those for this project. All right, so let's go ahead and bind the character to the rig. So when we move the bones, we'll move the character as well. To do that, let's select the character. So I've got that character object selected. All these others, the eyes and the gun and the hair, we're going to parent directly to specific bones. But for this, we're going to bind the entire character to the entire rig. So I've selected the character. I'm going to shift select one of the controls on the rig, and then I'm going to press Control P. And now we can parent the armature to the rig with automatic weights, which means it's going to automatically try and adjust the influence of each particular bone. So it's going to try and say, well, this forearm bone should influence the forearm more than the ankle. It's going to take an educated guess as to what part of the character should be bound to what part of the rig. Of course, since it's a computer, it's never perfect, and we're going to have to go through and make a few adjustments along the way. But I'll press Control P, and let's choose Armature Deform with Automatic Weights. Okay, let's give this a try. First, I'm going to press Control S and save the file. Now let's grab this hand control right here, this hand IKL, and let's just hit G and move it around. And look at that. We've got our character control. Now let's come up here, and if we click on the head bone and hit the R key twice, we can turn the head, but watch this, the hair and the eyes won't come along. So I'll hit R twice, and you can see that the hair and the eyes aren't coming along for the ride. If we come down here and click on the torso control, we can hit G and move it down, and he begins to kind of do the squats. And that's good, but we still have some work to do here. And look at this. Look at the belt buckles and the rivets aren't a part of this now. So we're going to have to work on that. That's going to be an issue. But let me hit Control Z. And actually what you can do to get everything back to where it was at the beginning is hit the A key and select everything. And then you can press Alt R and Alt G, and that clears the rotation and the transformation of any of the selected bones. So we know it's back to its original pose. Well, now that we've got the character bound to the rig, let's do some cleanup here. There are some things that I'm just not going to need or want to use for this particular character. And a couple of these things are like the tweak controls. And the tweak controls are these round blue spheres that I mentioned earlier. Those allow you to stretch the limbs. And as I said, I don't want those on this character. That's not the kind of character I'm creating here. So I'm going to turn off all the tweaks. Torso tweak, fingers, arms, arm, leg, leg. I'm just turning off all the tweaks there. And you can see all of those spheres are gone now. In addition, I want to turn off the stretch. Even though those are hidden away, I can still take this IK handle here and stretch the arm. And I don't want that either. I don't want to accidentally stretch a limb while I'm animating. So to do that, we need to select the IK handles, like here on the hand, and take this IK stretch down from 1 to 0. Now if I select that IK handle and hit G and move it, you can see the handle comes away from the arm before the arm stretches. And I like that. That's what I want. I want to be able to know that I'm keeping a realistic length to the limbs. All right, let's go do this one as well. Let's select that and take the IK stretch all the way down to 0. And down here as well, we have IK handles for the legs. If I hit G and move that around, you can see it moves the character's leg. Now, if I move it way out, it also stretches it. And once again, I don't want that. So I'll take the IK stretch down to 0 and down to 0 for this one as well. Okay, so now we've got those cleaned up. The next thing let's do is let's parent the hair to the head. To do that, I need to turn on a couple of layers over here in the armature panel. So I'm going to shift click this layer right here, and that turns on the layer where the actual deform bones are. So this bone right here, that's spine 006, is how the head is being turned and deformed. And I want to parent this hair to that object. So I'm going to select the hair, shift select, press shift and click that bone. And then I'm going to press Control P and I'm going to parent it to the bone right here. Now if we select this control object at the top of the head and hit R twice, I can rotate that and the hair comes along. There we go. So as you can see, there are some issues with the bind here. You can see that the object of the head is coming through the clothes as we turn the head. So we're going to need to work on that. And also in the next video, let's work on parenting the eyes so that when we select this control, we can move the eyes around. That's coming up next. Now let's work on parenting the eyeballs and the cornea to the eye bones. In this layer, however, we have all the deformed bones, but we don't have any bones for the eyeballs. So what we can do is shift click this layer to turn it off, and then the one right next to it, I'll shift click that one. And now we've got some bones here for the eyes itself. The one we want is this one right in the middle, right here, and that's called MCHI.L and R over here. All these others are for the eyelids. This one is MCH lid B, etc. This is the one we want, and it's got this little bone at the very tip aligned vertically here. So this is the one we want. But first of all, let's hide away the corneas here, the outer eye. Let me click on the eyeball here, the eyeball here to hide those away. And let's just work on the eyeballs first. So what let's do is just select an eyeball, and I'll hit the Z key just to make sure we have that selected. And then let's shift click or shift select that MCHI.L right there. And now let's press Control P and we'll parent it to the bone right here. Okay, now we've done that. Let's go over here and do the same thing on this side. Let's take this one and let's make sure that that's the one we want. Yep. And then let's shift select this bone right here. And then once again, let's press Control P and select bone. Okay, now that we have those, let's give it a test. If I click this out here and I hit the G key and move it around, you can see now the eyes follow that control, and that's what we want. And the cool thing about this is all those other bones that are controlling the eyelids, those are moving the eyelids as well, not as quickly, so they move a little bit slower, but they're moving it along with the movement of the eyes. All right, that's good. So now what let's do is let's do the same thing with the outer eyes. Let's come back and I'll turn on the one for the left side, and let's go ahead and select that up here in the outliner like that. Now if we go down here and try and find in this mess of lines here, let's shift click this one. Yep, that's it. And let's press Control P and also parent this to the bone. Okay, now let's come over here and let's select this outer eye on the right side. I'll click the eyeball to bring it back, select it in the outliner, and then let's see if we can find that bone here. Here it is. I think I see it right here. There we go. Now that we have that selected, let's press Control P and select bone. So now we should have, in addition to the inner eye, we should have the movement of the outer eye as well. And it looks like that's what we have. Yeah, I think, let me zoom in just a little bit more to make sure. Yeah, so we have those moving as well. Okay, so if we want to use those in our animation here in Blender, we can. For now, though, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and hide those away. Let me select this outer eye, and I'll come over here to the outliner, and I'll hit the period key, and that will frame it up for me right here. And there it is. You can see parented to the rig. And let's go ahead and turn that off, turn the visibility off for that, and I'll go ahead and do that for the right side as well. Okay, so we have those done. Now let's take a look at the gun. We really need to do the same thing for the gun, but we need to figure out what bone we need to use down here. So if I select this torso control right here and we hit G and move down, let's try and figure out what bone we need. Let me shift select or deselect this layer here, and let's bring back the deformed bones right here. All right, so now let's try and figure out what bone we need to parent this to. It looks like it'd be this one, but let's see. If I select this control and move it down, it looks like, yeah, it looks like that the holster is following along with this bone pretty closely. So let's give this a try. To bring this back into alignment, I'll go ahead and select everything, and I'll press Alt-G, and that'll reset the transformation for all of the control objects. And then let's now select the gun here, right there, and then let's shift select this bone right here. And then let's try and press Control P and parent that to the bone. And let's see how this works. I'll select the torso control, but actually let me deselect this layer to turn these off. And let's just see how this looks. I'll select that again, hit G and move down. And yeah, that's looking pretty good actually. That's staying in the holster pretty well. What's interesting is these parts aren't staying very well. We'll have to work on those. In addition, we did see, of course, that those aren't working out very well. So we're going to have to work on that. So, okay, so we have that parented pretty well there in the holster. We're just going to have to do some weight painting to get these in line with the other parts of the body. And that's okay. That's part of the process. All right, so I'll hit A and Alt-G. I'll also press Alt-R just to make sure we have all the rotations cleared as well. The last thing we should do is go ahead and parent the teeth. We have these still out as their own objects, unparented to anything here in the outliner. So let's take a look at this. I'll zoom into one of these, and what we need to do here is parent the teeth objects to these controls right here. Let's turn on this layer just to make sure we don't have anything in here that we need to work with. I'm getting some clipping here on the face as we zoom in. Let's see if we can fix that. If I zoom in like this, you can see how it's kind of cutting into the object. Let me hit the N key and let's scroll up and let's find the clip start and end. The clip start is 0.1. Let's change that to 0.01 and see if that helps us. Yeah, that's going to work a little bit better. Okay, so I'll hit the N key to close that. Now, if we look at the bones in here, it looks like it is those controls that we want to parent to because there aren't any other deformed bones for the teeth here. We've got them for the tongue here and the lips, but we don't have anything for the teeth except this and this, right? So we need to work with those. All right, so I'll turn these off right here. All right, so what we need to do here is go ahead and parent the upper and lower teeth to these control objects. So let's work with the lower teeth first. I'm going to select this object in the outliner, teeth lower, and then I'll shift select this object right here, that teeth.b, and then let's press Control P and parent to the bone. All right, now let's do the upper. I'll select the upper over here in the outliner, shift select this control object right here, teeth.t, and then I'll press Control P and parent to the bone. All right, so now let's give this a quick test. Let's come down here and select this bone right here, this control object right here, this jaw master control. And remember when I repositioned the jawbone back here? Let me go to the side view. You can see here the origin point, the pivot point of this object is at that joint that we placed in the meta rig right here, and that's why I moved that. So let's see how we did. Let me go to the rotate tool here, and I'm just going to click and drag here and open the mouth here. All right, so it looks like we've got a fairly good opening, but the gums aren't coming along, right? So the gums are staying up and aren't exactly moving the way we'd want to. So we're going to need to do some weight painting in here as well. But we can also take these control objects and move them around like this. We could take these and scale them in like that. So these controls are really going to help us with the animation of the face, but as we can see, we have a bit of weight painting to do here to fix the deformations. All right, so I'm going to select everything again, press Alt-G and Alt-R, and that'll take everything back to where it was. And okay, so now that we've parented everything to the proper bones, now let's go in the next video and begin the weight painting process. Now that we've bound the character to the rig and parented all the other objects to the rig, let's now talk about weight painting. And what that is really just an ability to assign how much influence each bone of the rig has to each vertex of the character. So let's take a look at that. Actually, before we do, let me turn off one more thing here on the rig. You can see that if I click on one of the IK handles, say for the hand here, and I hit G and move that around, there's this thing right here. And that's the FK, or forward kinematic controls of the rig. And I'm really just going to be using, for the purposes of this project, the inverse kinematics, the IK. Now let me press Alt-G and take that back to where it was. So we have the option of controlling the limbs kind of from the top down here. That would be going forward out along the limb. Or inversely, we can select this handle and then move it, and everything else will follow along. The rotations will happen inversely up the chain. So I'm just going to use inverse kinematics as opposed to forward kinematics. So what I'll do is I'll hit the N key and scroll down here to this rig layers panel, and anywhere where I see FK, I'm just going to disable this, the arm FK, leg FK, etc. So I won't even see those in the rig anymore. All right, so let me hit the N key to close that up. So now let's take a look at how the influence works for the rig. I'll grab that hand control again and move it up. So now I'm going to select the character itself, and I'll hit Tab, and you can see how the rig pops back to its original pose mode, and we can change that by coming over here to the modifiers panel, and here in the modifiers panel you can see we have an armature modifier, and this was applied, or this was created, when we bound the character to the rig when we pressed Control P and chose armature weights. So we can come over here and choose edit mode and display, and that will display the movement of, or the deformation of, the character in edit mode. So now let's come in here and let's just select a point. I'll just select, say, I don't know, let's select this point here. And I'll press the N key and I'll scroll all the way up. And if we come up here to vertex weights, we can see that this point right here is being influenced by two things: the forearm and the forearm 001. Those are the two bones here in the arm. Let's come down here and maybe select a point here in the hand, right up in here. So now this point right in here is being influenced by one of the forearm bones, the hand bone, and the thumb bone. It's being influenced about 72% by the forearm, maybe 18% by the hand, and 7% here by the thumb. So let's say we increase the influence from the thumb. I'm going to hit the period key to zoom into this so I can tumble around. So let's try and maybe change one of these influences. Let's just say we change the influence of the thumb bone from 0.07 to 1.0. Let's just try that. What happens there? Did you see it move there? It moved toward the thumb just a little bit. Let's now take the forearm influence down from 0.7 to maybe 0.01. You can see it moved a little bit more there, right? So what I'm doing is I'm increasing the influence of the thumb bone, and it's moving it toward the thumb. Let's go ahead and press Control Z and Control Z, and you can see it move back up toward the forearm bone. So that's what the influences do. That's what Blender went through when we parented the character to the rig and chose automatic weights. It went through every vertex and tried to assign the weights for each of them to the proper bones. Now, once again, it's a computer, so it can only do so well. There's going to be some things that we're going to have to adjust. But going through here and doing it point by point would be really tedious. So that's what the weight painting system of Blender can do for us. It can make it a little bit easier. It's still rather tedious, but it can make it a little bit easier by making the influence visual. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to tab back into object mode for the character, and with the character still selected, I'm going to change from object mode to weight paint. There we go. So now you can see we've got this blue color on the character, and we have this red, yellow, green down here on the toe. For us to really be able to use this, we're going to need to turn on that rig layer with the deformed bones in it. So let me go back to the rig. Let's come out of weight paint mode. Let's select the rig. Let's go to the rig panel, and let's shift click this layer right here, and that turns on all the deformed bones. All right, so now let's go back to the character, and let's go back to weight paint mode. Here we go. So now what we can do is we can come in here and select a bone right here, and you can begin to see the influence of that bone on the vertices around it. So let's say this forearm bone here. The red color is the most influence, is the highest influence. From there, it goes down to yellow, then green, then blue, and blue is the least influence. So if we select this bone here, you can see that it's got quite a bit of influence here in the middle, this orangish red, and then it fades off into yellow and then blue. And up here you've got a little bit of influence in the green here, so it fades off from orange red into green and then into blue. So red is the most influence and blue is the least. Let's go back and take a look at this hand bone right here. Let's do a little bit of weight painting to try and get the cuff of the jacket to follow this hand bone a little bit better. You can see it's kind of cutting into the hand here as the hand turns. So to do that, let's first of all go over to the Options tab and let's turn on X mirror and topology mirror, so whatever we do to this side happens to the other side. And then in the Tools panel, you can see here we've got several brush types. I'll choose the Mix brush right here. And then we have our Strength and Radius here. This is just like the texture painting tools, so we can hit the F key and increase the size of the brush here. And we can press Shift F and increase or decrease the strength of the brush as well. So let's come over here and see what we can do for the cuff. With this bone selected here, I can begin painting the cuff of the jacket here. Maybe I'll just click and begin to paint here. Now, I'm going to have to move the hand a bit because I can't get to the cuff inside the hand. So I'll select this control object, hit R, and move the hand away from the cuff just a bit. And then I'll come back and select that hand bone. Now I can come in here and just click and drag on the cuff of the jacket. Now look at what I did here. I accidentally selected or clicked on the jacket and it's beginning to pull it here in the back. So let me hit Control Z and undo that. You do have to be careful about what you're painting on. So I'm going to click and try and add some influence on the cuff here and maybe in here. And let's paint it along in here and over here as well. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and give this a try here. Let's try this. All right, so I've painted a bit there. Let's go back to that hand control right here and let's hit R and move. And now you can see it's moving a little bit more with the hand and it isn't quite cutting into it as early as it was. So that's our process. That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to go through and find deform problems in the mesh by moving the controls around. And then we're going to use both the weight paint tools and also the tools over here in the sidebar to try and correct the deformation so that the character moves and deforms in a realistic and believable way. So if we begin to go through and select some of these other bones on the character, you can see their influence as I click on them. So let's take a look at this. There isn't a whole lot of influence here, but for the collarbones, there we go, there is quite a bit of influence here. And if we go down to here, and here, and into here, and here, you can see the influence of all of these. So you can see if I select that hip bone, there isn't really much, if any, influence happening on the belt buckles here. So that's why when we move the character around, those aren't coming along. And as we click down here, you can see the influence for the legs down here, and the feet, and the toes. All right, so that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to go through and work on adjusting the influence, the weights, throughout the character so it deforms in a believable way. Well, let's start working on the torso of the character. I'll go ahead and zoom in here. And if we select this bone here, this spine 003, and once again, I'm in weight paint mode here. I've selected the character and then gone to weight paint mode. If we go to the front view here, what I'd like to do is add some influence here around the chest. Now, if we select the bones for the shoulder or the clavicle, you can see there's quite a bit of influence coming out of these. And that's good, but I feel like right in here we need something. And if I look at the breast bones right here, there's quite a bit of influence here as well. But I feel like there's not quite enough here. So what I'm going to do is maybe I'll go to Add, and let's go ahead and add, let's type in 0.7, and let's just add some influence in here. I'll hit the F key and expand the brush size, and if I just click and drag, you can see that because we turned on X-axis mirror over here under Options, right here, and Topology mirror, we're getting influence on both sides, but not here because this part isn't symmetrical, so we're going to have to go in and grab some of this as well. So I just want to add some influence right in here. And so let's see if we do this. I'm just taking a look at the clavicles, and it looks like, yeah, I want to go ahead and add some more influence right up in here. And maybe this will help hold down this part of the head object. So when we rotate the head, it won't pop out of the clothes quite as much here. Let's go around back. I'm going to press Control 1. And let's add some influence back here. Let me select these, the clavicles again, just to see what kind of influence we have. Yeah, they don't really go back down here. So let's go ahead and add a little more influence right in here. There we go. All right, so let's go with that for now. I'll spin around to the front again. And let's now come down to this bone, this spine 002. And we don't have much influence along the rib cage here, so let's add some here. I'm going to just click and drag right in here, adding some influence from this. And then let's also go back around the back, Control 1, and let's add some back here as well. So I'm just making sure that these bones in the torso have the proper influence. All right, let's try this one here. Well, that one doesn't have a whole lot. Let's go ahead and add some here, like this. And let's spin around with the 1 key and add some in here as well. So we have those now. That looks pretty good. Let's take this control object right here, and if we just hit R and rotate forward, we can see that we kind of have this kind of action. We can also hit the R key 2 times and kind of rotate it around. We've got a little bit of pulling of the clothes through each other here. We'll have to maybe work on that a bit, but I think it's looking pretty good. All right, so let's go down and take a look at this now. Here we have, I think, the root of the problem with the belt and the rivets. There's just no influence down here at all from this bone. Now if we select this bone, you can see the influence goes up to here, and it goes up to the top of the holster here and the top of the holster here. So that's why this bone is pulling these apart from the buckles and the rivets here. So we need to work on that. Let's take a look at this one over here. Yeah, this one looks better. So what we should do maybe is remove some of this influence on this up here. So let's do that. Let's come over here to the blend mode and let's choose subtract. And this time we can probably keep with 0.7, and now when we click and drag we remove influence from the model. So let's give this a try, see if this helps here. So I'm going to remove influence from here so we don't have quite as much there, and back here as well again. All right, so we've removed a good bit of influence from there. The next thing we need to do is add influence for this bone here. We can see influence up on the belt, that's good, but we don't have much down here. And if I just click and drag, we aren't going to be able to get into all the little nooks and crannies in the buckle and the rivet. So let's try something else. I'm going to switch back to add, but I think we're going to have to try another option. So we've looked at selecting one vertex and hitting the N key and coming up here and adjusting weights here. We've also looked at weight painting here in weight paint mode on the object, but another way to actually add influence is with the vertex groups down here. So if you go to this data panel, you will have a vertex group panel here. And each of these vertex groups that has been created corresponds to one of the deform bones here in the rig. So you can see if I select this bone, spine 002 vertex group is also selected. So each vertex group is a collection of vertices that have influence from the bone that we've selected. So this vertex group, we could add vertices to it and then assign a particular weight to that group of vertices. So let's give it a try. I'm going to tab into edit mode here, and I'll hit the Z key to go to wireframe. And you can see when I go to edit mode, I've got this weight slider here, and I can assign weights all the way up to 1.0 to any vertex that I select. So what let's do is let's just hit the border select tool, the B key, and let's just border select all of this right here. And that includes all the rivets, the straps, the buckles, everything. So now what we can do with that spine vertex group selected and the weight at 1.0, I can just click assign. And now let's go back to weight paint mode to take a look at it. I'll hit the tab key, and there we go. Now you can see I've got weight assigned 100% all the way around. And that's probably the kind of thing that we want. In addition, what I'll do is I'll come up here and I'll hover over the belt, and let's just press the L key to select that whole thing. And I'll go ahead and assign the spine vertex group to that as well. Let's give that a try. So if I tab back into weight paint mode, there we go. Now I didn't get this right here or this. Let's give these a try. Let's come back here, and I didn't get this, and let's make sure and grab these as well. Then I'll click assign over here. All right, now let's take a look at it. Yeah, that grabbed all of that. So what does that do for us? Well, theoretically now, if we select this control and hit G, we can move, and you can see that the belt and the buckles all come along. All right, so I'm going to select everything here and press Alt G and Alt R to go back to our basic pose. So that's how we can assign weights using the vertex groups over here in the data panel. All right, in the next video, what let's do is let's use our weight painting techniques and tools to work on adjusting the influence on the face and the inner mouth. Let's now take a look at the face. We can do a little bit of adjusting here as well. We saw before that when we rotated this control, I'm just going to press RX and rotate this down. There are a couple things that happen. One is that the jacket is pulled back into the skin, and the other is that the gums don't go down along with the teeth. So we're going to have to look at both of those. Let me open the mouth a little bit farther. I'll press R and X again, and I'm going to open that up a little bit farther. That's probably farther than a normal mouth would open. But for the gums here, instead of adding more weights to try and fix this, I think we might be able to remove some weights to make this deform a little better. So to do that, let's turn on this layer again over here with the deform bones in it. And then let's select the character and switch from object mode to weight paint. Here we go. So now I think what's happening is that the bones around the lips are influencing the gums and pulling them along with it as they move. So let's take a look. If I select, say, this bone right here, you can see there's a bit of influence on the gums here. And it's kind of hard to see the difference between this blue and that blue sometimes. So another way to view this is if we go over here to the Options tab, we can turn on Display Unweighted Vertices. And what that will do is make everything black that has no weights whatsoever. So now we could come in and under the Tools tab, switch from Add to Subtract, and I'll go ahead and take the strength all the way up to 1, and I'll reduce the brush size a bit. I'll hit the F key and bring that down. Now we could come in here and begin subtracting weights, and you can see it's kind of beginning to come down toward the teeth again. So I'll kind of subtract the weights along here. And now let's come down here to this one and let's subtract the weights here. And let's see if this will help. And let's also grab this bone here. Let's see, yeah, we've got quite a bit of influence happening in here. Let's subtract influence here and see if that helps a bit. What about this bone down here? Let's take a look at this. That has some influence on it. Let's see what we can do with this one. I'll remove the influence here, and yeah, look at that. That's beginning to pull it back down, isn't it? So this is helping. I'll select this bone here on the other side of the bottom lip, and let's try this one. And that one seems to be working pretty well. We're removing some of the weights here to see the teeth there. All right. Maybe let's try over here as well. Yeah, that helps. Yeah, I think that's looking pretty good. We're getting a good bit of it out of there, a good bit of that weight, so we can begin to see the teeth again. And it looks like we may need to do the same thing with the upper teeth. So I've selected this upper lip here, and let's just click and drag here, and it looks like that's going to bring that back some to reveal the teeth as well. So we'll just need to go through in the same process for the upper teeth that we did for the bottom teeth. All right, so there we go. I've just chosen this bone as well and selected the gums up here to remove the weights for that as well. All right, so let's now go back to object mode right here, and let's take a look at what we've done. I'll select the rig and shift select that layer to turn off the deformed bones. And we've still got some strangeness here in the gums. You can see here and here. So we'll need to work on that. But other than that, I think we're doing pretty well. These controls here can move out a bit like this. Yeah, I think we're doing pretty well. Let's take a look at the tongue. Let me just grab this and move this around. Now you can see the influence happening on the gums from the tongue. So we're going to need to go in and select the tongue bones and remove the weights off of the gum as well. So let's work on that for a moment. I'll turn the layer back on. Let's select the character, go back to weight paint mode, and I'll select one of the tongue bones here. That's not bad. I don't see much influence there. How about this one back here? Yeah, that's where the influence is happening. So let's once again click and drag and reduce the influence on the gums down here, like this. All right, so I'm going to select that control again and move it around. Now we still have something happening here. So in addition to taking those off, I think what I'd like to do is maybe add some weights, some influence from one of the bones down here. Let's see what we have here. It looks like we've got some influence already right here from this bone. And maybe we could kind of enhance that to kind of bring this down a bit. So maybe if we added, let's add maybe 0.5, something like that to here. What would happen here? Yeah, it looks like that would pull that down just a bit, and that's maybe what we want. Yeah, so let's kind of add some weight down here to pull the gums down a bit like this. All right, let's take a look at it now. I'll go back to object mode, and yeah, it looks like we're doing pretty well. Let's grab that tongue bone again and see what's happening. I'll hit G, move that around. We've still got a little bit happening here. We need to figure out what's going on there. So I'll select the character, go back to weight paint mode, and let's select this bone way back here. Well, we do have some influence here. Maybe we could subtract, take that up to 1 and click. Yeah, it looks like we could take some weights out here. Let's try that. Here we've got one, look at this, we've got one vertex that isn't connected to anything. It looks like this right here. I've tabbed into edit mode, and let's select this one guy right here, and let's see what's happening with this guy. So what we can do now is go back to the sidebar panel and take a look over here of all the influence we have for this one vertex. And take a look at this. We've got zeros for everything. So we need to make a decision as to what bone should be influencing this one lonely vertex. And we have it over here as well. So we could take this one vertex and maybe give it some influence from the jawbone here. Let's try that. I'll just click and drag, and there it goes. There it goes down toward the jawbone. Right? So you can adjust the weights of individual vertices in here if you like. Maybe we should increase the influence of the lip bone to this vertex. Let's just try it and see. Yeah, we can move it toward the lip there. So you can go in individually and really adjust one vertex at a time if you like. It may not be the most efficient, but it can be very precise and very detailed if you want to do that. All right, I'm going to tab back into object mode, and let's now take a look at some of these other bones around the face. It looks to me like there's quite a lot happening in here that we don't really need from that tongue bone. So I'm going to subtract at 1, and let's just subtract all of this. We don't need influence from that tongue bone down here on the neck. We don't even need it anywhere inside the mouth either, right? We can just get rid of all of that. Okay, so let's also take a look at, say, this bone here. That looks like it may be a little bit too much influence, so let's take that back a bit. Let's look at this one. Oh, look down here, it's got influence down on the clothes, and we don't want that, so let's remove that. We can go inside and see that we have it in here, so let's remove all of this as well. We don't need to influence all that. Here, that looks pretty good. That looks okay. What about these bones here? Oh, look at all of that. So we need to remove all of this. All right, so I'm going to go through and select more of these bones in here and begin removing the influence that we don't need. You can see it right in here as well. And if we tumble around inside, you can see all of this that doesn't need to be here, so we can get rid of all of this. There we go. So we need to do this for probably most of the bones on the face. We need to go through and get rid of any influence that shouldn't be there. So this is going to take a while, so I will do a bit of this off camera. But when we come back, let's take a look at the brows and the forehead, and let's see what we need to do with the weights for those. Well, I've gone through and cleaned up some of the weights here for, say, the jaw. Here's still one that I need to clean up here. Let's go ahead and work on this. Maybe I'll just come in here and with subtract and the strength at 1.0, I'll come in and try and clean that up a bit. We can also tumble around here in perspective mode and kind of see inside as well, like this, and remove some of the weights in here. So if you're in orthographic view, it won't work to spin around and see inside. It'll only work in perspective view here. But also, let's go up and look at more of the weights in the head. And to do that, I think I better hide the hair. So let's go back to object mode for just a minute and select the hair, and I'll hit the H key, and that'll hide that. Then I'll select the character again and go back to weight paint mode. And let's take a look at these up here. So if I select this ear bone, you can see that the influence goes way back here, and we don't really need that all the way back here. If I selected this bone, that looks pretty good. This one, once again, that's just way too big. So we need to kind of clean this up and ensure that one of these bones, one of these smaller bones like this, isn't going to influence a larger area, at least a larger area than we want. Let's take a look at this. Oh, this is interesting. I'll get rid of that up here like this. And once again, under options, we've got XMirror and topology turned on so that when we remove the weights from one side, we're removing the weights from the other side as well. All right, so we've got these cleaned up pretty well. Here, let me grab this and clean this up a bit. All right. Let's take a look at these up here. If I select this bone right here, well, look at that. Now, this bone is affecting everything on the eyebrow, so that's not going to work. If we select that brow control and hit G, that'll bring the whole thing up, and that's not what we want. So let's work on this. If I select this bone, does it have anything? No. And this bone, no. So basically, we need to redistribute the influence or the weights from all being associated with this bone to split it up into 3 for these 3 bones. So what let's do first is select this bone, and that will select the brow TL3 over here in the vertex groups. And then let's tab into edit mode. And let's remove the weights, say, let's get rid of these here. So what I'm going to do is select these points here. I've just alt-clicked those edges and selected those points. And what I'm going to do is just take those points and remove them from the vertex group of the brow TL3. So I'll just click remove. There we go. So now if we tab back into weight paint mode, we can see that those points have been taken out of this bone's influence. Okay, so now let's take this bone here and let's kind of do the opposite. Let's take this brow TL002, tab into edit mode. Let's select these edges right here. Let's assign those to this vertex group right here. Now let's tab back into weight paint mode. And now we've got those bound to this bone here. Now let's come over here and do the same thing with this one. I'll tab into edit mode, select this edge and this edge. And yeah, that looks like that's all that are there. And let's assign those to this TL001. There we go. So now if we tab back into weight paint mode, we can see that if we select this bone, it has influence there, influence here, and influence here. Now, we may need to adjust more of the weights underneath the eyebrows, but at least for now, that'll help. Let's take this one and move it around. Yeah, see, that only brings that part of the eyebrow around. And let's select this one. Yeah, see, that helps a lot. Okay, so we've got that. Let's now work on these here. Let's see what these are all about. Well, that's just way too much. And my guess is, let's go back to this bone here. If we move this, yeah, you can see up on the head, up in here, look at how it's deforming that part of the head. And even though that's going to be underneath the hair, we're still going to be able to see that. So we need to clean that up. So let's select this, and with our subtract still on, let's just get rid of all of the weights that we think are not applicable to this particular control, this particular bone. So maybe I take it all back to, I don't know, about like this, let's say. Let's select this one here. That one could be a little bit too much down here, maybe too much up here. So we're just trying to kind of clean this up, have some nice overlap between the bones here. So one kind of overlaps into the influence of the other, but we don't want them to be way off, say, on the other side of the head. Now, if we select this head bone here, right here, you can see this is the influence that we have for the head bone. And the reason why it isn't affecting all of the face is because all of these bones are parented to it, and all of these bones are the ones that are controlling the face. So let's now come back to this one, and this looks like it's a little too much up here. Let's get rid of that. And once again, it's kind of overlapping into the bone next to it here. Okay, so let's take a look at this one now. Whoa, look at that. So let's remove some there. Maybe even over here a bit. There we go. And this one looks okay. So now that we've done this on one side, it should be done for all the other side, except, did you see that eyebrow? Let's just check these. It looks like all of these were mirrored over okay, but if we select this one, look at that. We're going to have to go back and do the same thing with this side of the eyebrow. It didn't mirror over to the other side, and that sometimes happens. So let's do that once again. With this vertex group selected, the TR003 here, let's tab into edit mode, and I'll select these edges here like this. Let's remove those. Now we could stay in edit mode here and just select the next one. So we know that the next one is this TR002. So we could then select this one and maybe select these edges here and assign those. And then we could select this one and assign these here. Assign. All right, so now let's tab back into weight paint mode and let's take a look. So if we select this one, that looks pretty good. If we select this one, yep. And if we select that one, that looks pretty good as well. I think what I'll also do is go ahead and give a little bit more weight to this area so it's red, or at least more red, just like the eyebrow. So I'll come back to add, I'll keep it at 1.0 for just a minute, and I'll just kind of add a little bit of weight in here. And same thing here, kind of underneath the eyebrow there. And one over here. Okay, that's good. All right, so now let's take a look. I think we're doing pretty well. Like this and this, and this, and this, and these all mirrored over. Yeah, I think we're doing pretty well. All right, so now that we've got the head pretty well done, let's go take a look at the hands and the feet in the next video. Before we take a look at the hands, let's bring the hair back. I'll come over here to the outliner and just type in hair, and that'll bring this up here. Let's just click on the eyeball icon to bring that back. All right. Now for the hand, let's zoom in down here, and let's just take a look at what we have here. If I select the hand bone, this is what we have. It looks like we're not getting much influence up at the top of the hand. However, I think that's because these bones here are taking up the influence there, and that's fine. This is what we want, because we want these bones to control the top of the hand here, even the bottom of the hand. And that's generally because, let me select this control right here, this palm.L control. And if we hit R to rotate this, we can see that what this control does is it spreads out the fingers like this. And that's a nice control to have when you're working with hand animation. And that control affects all of those bones in the hand there, as well as all the fingers. So that's pretty good. That looks pretty good there. All right. Let's take a look at the actual fingers then. If I click on the thumb, it looks like it's a little bit too much all along here. We've got quite a bit of influence on the palm there. Let's click on this control here and just see what happens if we hit R and rotate this down. Does that do what we want it to do? Yeah, I mean, that's actually pretty good. That looks pretty good. And notice how all of the other bones are rotating slightly as well. So the drivers they have on the rig to drive the rotation of the bones further down in the chain is pretty nice. All right, so that actually looks pretty good. I'm going to press Alt-R to take that back to its default pose, And how about each of these? How do these look? Not too bad. Yeah, actually all of this is looking pretty good. Let's take a look at one of the fingers here, the index finger. Let's take a look at that. Now it looks like we may have a little too much influence in here, but once again, it's really not bad at all. I may be able to live with that. Alt-R again. Let's take a look at these. Let's just click here. Yeah, you can see some of that influence creeping back into the hand here as well, and here, and here. So maybe I'm just going to move this back just a little bit. So I'll go back to subtract here, and let's just kind of creep that back so it doesn't overlap so much into the hand and onto the other fingers as well. We don't really need that. So just bring that around like that. All right, let's take a look at this one. Once again, it looks like it's a little bit too much on the other fingers. So let's try and clean that up a bit. And this looks pretty good at the top of the hand. Let's go down here and kind of clean this up a bit. So this just may be something you need to do depending on how your character deforms after the automatic binding. But generally speaking, it does pretty well. It really saves a whole lot of time if you were to do all of this weighting by hand right up front. So let me spin around here and get this. Yeah, this looks pretty good. All right. And then let's do this one. Not too bad for the top of the hand here. And oh, it looks like I already got that one. Okay. And then this one, not too bad here either. Let's just clean it up on the other finger, and I think we're pretty good. Okay. Yeah, I like that. That looks pretty good. And these other bones seem pretty good as well. Not too much overlap, and they don't appear to be bleeding to the other fingers, and that's always a concern when a finger bone, the influence bleeds over into another finger. But it's looking pretty good. Yeah, okay. So now let's go take a look at the feet. I'll select one of the controls and hit period, and let's come down here and take a look at this. Now, the way these work is this control right here, let me go to the side view, is to be used to rotate the foot forward and back on its heel and onto the toe. So you see how it rotates up toward the toe and also back on the heel where we put that bone when we were placing our joints. So actually this looks pretty good. I'm not too concerned about this actually. I'm going to hit R and X and rotate that up, tilt it back. Yeah, I mean that looks really good. I'm going to grab this control right here, and this is just for the toes alone. If I hit R, you can see that'll go up and down. And this I'm not too concerned about because our toes don't really do that. But to go up like that, that looks pretty good as well. So there really isn't a whole lot to do here in the feet. That's good. If we select one of these controls and just move the leg up, I'll just move the foot up like that, and then we can control the knee with this control. And we also have one up here for the elbows as well. And so if I take this control and hit R and rotate it, I can move or point the knee where it needs to go. And I'm just looking at the various deformations here along the knee and the buttocks and up here in the hip. And it's not looking too bad, but there may be some points that we want to work on here. Let's take a look. You see how this is kind of pulling out, and it may be because of this here. We could take a look at this. Yeah, so maybe let's just try and remove some here. What if I take this away? Yeah, that pops back in. If I take some of this away, let's try that. There we go. I think that's a little bit better. All right. So I'll take this again. Actually, I'll select everything with the A key and press Alt-G and Alt-R. All right, I think we're looking pretty good now. Let me clear the search word over here so we can see the outliner again. And I'll come back from weight paint mode and go back to object mode. And in addition, I'll select the rig and deselect this layer right here. Shift click that. In addition, we've got a lot of facial controls up here. And if we hit the N key and scroll all the way down on the sidebar, you can see we've got face primary and face secondary. And if I turn off the secondary, that turns off all the yellow controls. And that's probably a pretty good way to do your first pass of the animation, is with the primary controls. So you can do things like close the eyes. Let me zoom in here and zoom out. You can do things like close the eyes like this. You can select this whole thing and move the entire eye, although I'm not quite sure why you'd want to do that. And these are, of course, the nose controls here, the mouth controls, etc., and the cheeks. And then if you want to get into really detailed work, you can then turn on the secondary controls, and that'll really allow you to get quite a bit of detail in here. But for the most part, I tend to keep that off until they're absolutely needed. All right, so I'll hit the N key, and let's then go back here, and let's now turn on the textures. I'll come down here and go to the textured viewport shading. And there we go. We can see our textures now. I mean, they're not the final textures, of course, but generally speaking, it's kind of a nice thing to be able to animate with at least some temporary textures like this. All right, so let's just take a look and make sure we've got everything connected. I've turned off the stretch so I can pull this guy away from its IK handles, and that's okay. If I grab this control here and move it, okay. And I'm just looking for areas that I may have missed. If I take this and bend it, is there anything that kind of sticks out? Let's see how the head is doing now. Doing better than it was. There's still a little bit happening at the edges of the coat. You can see there, right? So I'll need to work on that. Yeah, so I think we're doing pretty well. So far, so good. It looks like the gun is staying in place when we bend the leg. It looks like we're doing pretty well. All right, I'm going to hit Alt-G and Alt-R. So this is basically what the final rigged character will look like. Now, earlier in the course, I had mentioned that there was a way to go back. So if you create the meta rig here, and then you generate the control rig, and then you bind the character to the control rig, and you find that there's a problem. You find you want to go back and change the location of one of these joints here. How do you do that? Well, there is a way. It's not pretty, but there is a way to do it. And in the next video, we'll go ahead and talk about that. Well, let's just say that you've set up the meta rig here, then you've generated the rig, and then you've bound or parented the character to the rig. And once you begin moving the rig around, you realize that there's a joint or two in the wrong place, that you should go back and adjust the meta rig. So there is a way to do that. You should, of course, do this before you begin adjusting all the weights as we've done in the past few videos. But if you find that there's a problem, you can go back. So remember, all we did to bind the character to the rig was just parent it and choose parent to armature. And when we did that, over here in the modifiers panel, an armature modifier was created. So you might think, well, we could just delete this and we'd be good. And you'd be part right. So let's just try this. Let me show you what I mean. If I delete this, now I grab that character and move it around, it is no longer bound to the rig, and that's good. If I select, say, this and move it around, you can see we're no longer deforming the mesh. However, the character has not yet come out from being parented to the rig. So we would need to unparent the character as well. So instead of going straight over and deleting the armature modifier, here I'm going to press Control Z to undo. Let's go back a ways here. There we go. So instead of deleting this directly, I would suggest you select the character and then press Alt-P and then choose Clear Parent. And what that will do is delete the armature modifier and at the same time move the character out from being parented to the rig. Now, once again, we've got our character unbound from the rig, but we've also moved it out of the rig hierarchy. So now that we've done that, we can select this rig now. I'm going to choose object mode here, and we can select the rig and just delete it. Now, keep in mind the hair, the eyes, the gun are all still parented to the rig. So we should unparent those as well. So if we come over here to the outliner and we right-click on the rig here and we choose Delete Hierarchy, watch what happens. We delete the hair, the eyes, the gun, etc. But let me press Control Z again to go back. But if we come into the 3D view and just select it here in object mode and hit X and delete, we delete the rig, but we leave behind the parented objects. Because we aren't deleting the hierarchy or the things parented, we're deleting the rig. So you can see here in the outliner, the hair, the gun, the eyes, the outer eyes are all still here. Now, in addition, you can also, if you want to be super thorough about it, you can also select one of those objects and press Alt-P and clear the parent as well before you delete the rig. But I just wanted to show you that you could do that as well. All right, in addition, we've got these things over here, and these are all of the custom objects that stand in for the bones on the rig. And this is this WGTS over here, and we can just take this and right-click on it and delete hierarchy here, and that will delete the whole thing. So now we can go back to the meta rig, and we can now select it, go back to edit mode, and begin moving the joints around. So that's how you can go back once you've generated the rig and bound the character. And once you've placed all the joints here, you can just go back through the process again. So with this selected in object mode, I'll then come over here to the rig panel, scroll all the way down, press generate. And then once the control rig is created, I can then go to pose mode here. I can then select the character, shift select one of the controls, press Control P, and once again, parent the character to the armature with automatic weights. And then we should have our character once again bound to the rig. So there you go. That's how you can go back and edit the meta rig and begin again. Well, thank you for joining me on this journey through Blender character creation. I hope it's been useful for you. I've certainly enjoyed it. I always love bringing a character to life in Blender. It's just a wonderful process with an amazing software program. Well, as I said, I hope this course has been useful for you. Well, thanks again, and take care.